So a few years ago, I made a decision to stop playing it safe at work, and it was pretty terrifying. I wasn't entirely sure if what I was about to do was brilliant strategic thinking or possibly just career suicide. But what I knew for certain was that another year of safe, predictable moves would mean watching my potential slowly slip away whilst I stayed comfortable in a role that no longer really challenged me. And hopefully, by sharing the three surprising lessons that gave me permission to take some calculated risks within my corporate career, it will give you the clarity and confidence to stop settling for normal progression and instead take the kind of bold moves that most professionals never dare to take. So, for the first 7 years of my career, I was the definition of a safe corporate player. I delivered what was expected, I worked hard, and every promotion came from following the established path, never really blocking the boat. Graduate to manager to senior manager, steady, predictable, pretty safe. And my approach was methodical. Keep your head down, deliver great work, and wait for the recognition to come. And that worked. But then I started to notice that the people landing the most interesting opportunities, the ones who really stood out, weren't the ones playing it safe like I was. They were the ones taking risks, saying yes to the difficult clients, speaking up on the tough issues, and stepping forward when others like me were holding back. And that's when it hit me. If I kept following the safe, predictable path, I'd always be solid, I'd have a good career, but I'd never really stand out and have a great career. And if I wanted to reach my real potential, to do exceptional work that genuinely mattered to me, something had to change. And looking back, there were three moments that stand out. Three times I took a risk that felt uncomfortable in the moment, but they turned out to be some of the best decisions I made. And each of them taught me something I'd never had learned if I'd kept playing it safe. So the first of these lessons was when I was handed a client that everyone knew was tough, demanding stakeholders, complex issues, and a bit of a reputation for burning people out, a real hospital pass. But actually, part of me was excited. Visibility with this client could be a real career step. But another part of me was nervous, right? I'd seen colleagues walk out of meetings looking really drained dealing with this client, and I wondered if I'd actually taken on more than I could handle. The safe move would have been to stick to the technical work and let others more senior than me front the difficult conversations. Stay invisible, stay safe. But after one particularly tense meeting, I realized something, that keeping my head down was actually the riskiest move of all. If I played it safe, I'd kind of disappear into the background. But if I leaned in, built the relationship, asked the tough questions, pushed back when it mattered, that's when I'd stand out. So I stopped waiting for others more senior than me to lead. I started taking the conversations myself. I made time to understand what really mattered to the client, and slowly the dynamic changed. And that relationship that I once dreaded became one of the most rewarding client relationships that I had. And inside the firm, people noticed. It gave me credibility that I wouldn't have gained any other way. Because here's the truth. Every senior professional gets moments like this. The safe choice is to step aside, let someone else deal with a tough relationship, and protect your reputation. But the paradox is this. The very situations that feel most dangerous are really the ones that accelerate your career. They're where most people back off, which is exactly why leaning in can set you apart. So if you want some acceleration, check in with yourself. Playing it safe doesn't just keep you comfortable, it keeps you stuck. And it's boldness in the tough relationships that opens the door to your next level. Not long after that, I learned about the second thing about corporate risk-taking. I'd found myself in a leadership meeting where the agenda was dominated by revenue targets and chargeable hours, and everyone was nodding along. But I could see the impact that some of this was having on our people because we were already asking a lot of them. And I felt some real tension here. Part of me wanted to keep quiet and avoid being seen as not commercial. That would have been the safe move. But in that moment, I realized that silence was the bigger risk. Staying quiet might keep me safe, but it would also keep me invisible. And speaking up, even if it might not have been popular, was the only way to be seen as someone with a real point of view. So I argued that yes, obviously the performance numbers mattered, but if we didn't invest in our people, we'd be in a trickier position long term. It was uncomfortable, some partners pushed back, but others did actually lean in. And that moment set me on the path that eventually led to me becoming head of people. So here's the universal truth. Delivering solid work quietly will only ever take you so far. And at senior levels, it's not just about what you do, it's about what you stand for. And if you're feeling a bit stuck, this is often the reason why. The safe move, staying silent, keeping your head down, that doesn't hurt you in the short term, but long term, it guarantees that you won't be seen. Boldness in the corporate world isn't just about taking on tough assignments. Sometimes it's simply about having the courage to speak up when it matters. That's when people start to see you as a leader. And this led me to realize something even more important, because around the same time, I was asked to mentor a colleague who had a reputation for being pretty difficult. They were talented, yep, but they were pretty rough around the edges, and they often rubbed people the wrong way. And a lot of others had quietly written this person off. And I'll be honest, I was like, I don't need more work to do. And the safe move would have been to just go through the motions, tick the mentoring box, give some generic feedback, and keep a bit of a distance. But in our first conversation, I realized that avoiding the challenge was going to be a waste of both of our time. But if I leaned in and gave some really honest feedback, spent some real time with them and pushed them to improve, it would be better for them, and it was going to stretch me as a leader. So that's what I did. I invested more than I had to. I was direct about what wasn't working, but I also created opportunities for them to succeed. And over time, they started to turn a corner. And seeing them grow was actually one of the most rewarding experiences I had at the firm. And here's the universal application. It's easy to play it safe with people. Work with the easy ones, avoid the difficult ones, and don't risk your own reputation. But if you want to accelerate your growth, you have to take on some of the challenges that others avoid. And if that is helping someone else develop, you'll also discover just how much you can grow in the process yourself. And this might be your big unlock. Boldness doesn't always mean chasing the biggest client or the flashiest project. Sometimes it's about leaning into the messy work of developing people. That's the work that makes you a leader. And when I look back at those 3 lessons together, the pattern is now obvious. Saying yes to the difficult client, speaking up on people issues, and mentoring someone others had written off. None of those were safe moves, but they were the moments that really accelerated my career, gave me visibility, and built my confidence. More importantly, they showed me something that I hadn't fully recognized before, that what I loved most and what I was best at was the people side of things. And that realization is what ultimately led me to the work that I do now. But understanding those lessons about risk-taking wasn't enough on its own to change my career trajectory, because there were still the other practical realities, other client expectations, firm politics, the responsibility of leading big teams. So let's be clear, making bold moves in corporate isn't about being reckless. It takes timing, credibility, and trust. And that's just the reality of senior leadership. And that's why I was deliberate. I built strong internal relationships. I made sure I delivered consistently before I pushed for the stretch opportunities. And I chose my battles carefully. So when I did take risks, they were calculated ones. And over time, those moves built up a track record. And it was only once I had that credibility and the trust of leadership that I was comfortable taking the bigger risks that really accelerated my career, including that leap into the head of people role. And what I didn't know at the time was that those experiences were laying the groundwork for everything I do now. Because today, through Atomic Ambition, I help ambitious professionals to do exactly the same thing. They stop playing it safe, they take the right kind of risks, and they unlock their own potential. My career was transformed by learning how to be bold in a way that fit the corporate environment I was in. And that shift in risk tolerance didn't just change my trajectory, it changed my confidence and ultimately my whole approach to how I worked. Maybe your version of corporate boldness looks completely different than mine. Maybe you need to push for that promotion conversation that you've been avoiding, or propose for that innovative project that's been in the back of your mind for months. Whatever it is, just make sure that whatever corporate risks you're taking, they're yours. They're your calculated moves based on your assessment of the opportunities, and that they're not driven by what feels safest or what other people expect from somebody at your level. Because if you don't do this, the regret of watching others advance while you play it safe is far harder to take than any risk you'll take while pursuing the recognition that you deserve. Now, if you're ready to stop playing safe and start making the bold corporate moves that actually reflect your potential, I can help. And you'll find a link in the description below. And here's the thing, taking risks only works if you can spot which opportunities are worth it and which ones will keep you stuck. So watch this next video where I break down the 5 smart career moves that keep professionals stuck and what to do instead. Because even with courage, the wrong kind of risks will hold you back, but the right ones will completely change your career.